Today I'll be presenting my food security case study on Dillingham, Alaska. So in assessing food security, I looked at several different parts of that, and one big component was accessibility, which when further broken down has two main components, availability and affordability. Now, I couldn't find a lot of recent data on Dillingham, but compiling a bunch of sources from as early as 2010 up until 2019 or 2020, I found a few statistics. In Dillingham itself, there's three grocery stores. A few of them have some more of like a mini mart feel, but some of them also have bigger imports. And a lot of food is shipped into these stores to be distributed in the community and purchased. When a research group compiled an index of the average cost of food and groceries across the United States and then put the average on that bell curve at 100. Dillingham was found to be 188.2 in comparison. And while in Alaska it will be higher, for example, Anchorage is 122.3. It's still 35% more expensive just to purchase food and groceries in Dillingham than it is in other parts of Alaska, much less the United States as a whole. According to a 2017 survey, 16.5% of people in Dillingham worry that they will run out of food before they have enough money to purchase more. And 50.78% of people don't have easy access to a grocery store. And easy access was defined as living within 10 miles or less of a grocery store. So although Dillingham is pretty small, its census area is larger, and those people in that census area were included in these statistics. More on accessibility, in terms of affordability, the median household income for food stamps or SNAP recipients was $21,823. So that was the amount of money that was deemed insufficient to be able to purchase their own groceries and to require outside assistance. And then again, in that larger Yukon-Kuskokwim area, 136,844 pounds of food were distributed through food banks, and just kind of partner agencies, so like local charities and faith-based groups, as well as nonprofits working with the Food Bank of Alaska. And the only food bank in the area, though, that distributed to Dillingham and to the Dillingham census area residents was the Bristol Bay Native Association. Subsistence is a big part of food security in Dillingham. Looking at the different types of subsistence revealed that 84% of residents attempted harvesting any kind of overall resources for themselves. So things like plants and berries were super high with 69%. Fish was also really big, especially salmon in the area, but a couple other different kinds as well. So another 69% of those people. Other hunting, so small mammals, large mammals, marine animals, that were not fish, hunting birds and eggs and stuff, was all grouped into one category, and that was 40%. And then fur bearers was consistently a lot lower at only 14%. Now, even more people, instead of just harvesting resources for themselves, were involved in some kind of processing. So this could also reflect into interdependence on the cash economy. But processing fish was a really big occupation, as well as processing plants and making jams and stuff. Processing mammals, games, birds, as well as fur bearers again was pretty low here. Other aspects of food security that I wanted to include in this case study were stability and quality. So a big thing about Dillingham is that their population changes in the summer because of tourism and because of summer fishing season, especially in the Bristol Bay area. So the stability of their markets and what they do and do not import over the course of the years changes steadily in response to the changes in their population. And this could be heavily impacted by something such as the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, where tourism is going to be way down and the support structures in place for commercialized fishers coming into the communities and stuff will be a lot different. And it still remains to be seen how that plays out this summer. Subsistence activities in Dillingham are falling at the rate in general, especially the past few decades, but compared to the rest of Alaska, it's still very high. There are also some very interesting developments in food security in Dillingham, especially with the farm to school program. So this started with a school garden, and it also, I think, branched out into things like local farmers or homesteads selling produce directly to the schools instead of going through all those commercial or imported routes. And then another thing that gained traction in the rest of the state was the fish to school. So the Dillingham school district made an agreement with the local communities, especially with Peter Pan, which is a fish processing plant in or fish processing service in Dillingham. And so whenever the local fishermen donated fish for the school, Peter Pan would process them for free, and then students in the schools could get cheaper meals that were also more nutritious. Another part of food security that I think gets left out of the conversation oftentimes is the access to clean water. And this can be a big problem in Dillingham. You wouldn't think so because it's right on the river and stuff, but it can be a big issue. One example was a recent development in clean water in Dillingham. The Department of Transportation and Public Facilities received an alert that there were toxic chemicals in a well. So then the Department of Environmental Conservation contracted with a third party, and they were investigating the wells, especially near the airport, for, I'm going to butcher this word, but polyfluoral. I'm going to let you read that, PFAS in 2018, and the initial study went all the way into 2019. And then they expanded that investigation to find that out of the 65 wells that they surveyed and sampled, 35 of them had that toxic substance. 7 were above the actionable limit, and only 30 of them were safe. So just quick, PFAS is a chemical that's used in fire suppression, so it can also be used to protect materials and equipment against like general wear and tear, as well as repel oil, stain, grease, and water from further damaging equipment. So they hypothesized that PFAS was used, it's also a component of AFF or aqueous film forming foams during testing equipment for the firefighters at the airport. So that's why it was localized around that region. So then they did the investigation, found a bunch of high and unsafe water, and they immediately provided alternative water sources to the people who were relying on those contaminated wells. And then they decided to institute quarterly and or yearly monitoring of those wells going forwards so that they can track the movement of those toxic substances and track what the levels are doing and how they're changing and where they're moving geographically. As of 2027, only 7 wells were above those safe levels, so they had more frequent monitoring, and alternative sources had been provided to every family that had been relying on toxic water. So that is an example of something that isn't traditionally associated with food security, but plays a huge part. And this one's a very recent and local case in Dillingham. My resources, I used a lot of Graylit, so government reports from DOT, SNAP surveys, cost of living, and here are a few more. Thanks for listening.